Hi, welcome back to another episode of Wilkin & Gut and Plans, the Balance Sheet Breakdown. Today I'm really excited. We're kicking off our four-part series where we're discussing some of the metrics that impact firm profitability and really allow professional service firms to understand profitability and some of the metrics associated with it. I'm Chris Frederick, a partner with the firm, and joining me for this four-part series is the leader of our professional practices group, Karen Artasanchez. So Karen, I'm super excited to kind of get into it with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and I'm glad that you're excited because I am too. Over the next 4 weeks, I think one of the things that we are trying to accomplish here is just sharing information, sharing our experiences, and really helping leadership of professional service firms really focus on some of the metrics that drive profitability, utilization, realization, margin and profitability, and leverage.
Much of our 4-week conversation isn't going to be earth-shattering, maybe to many people. I think it's just about level setting and understanding the data.
The data, right. And I think by the end of 4 weeks, I will probably have sounded like a broken record
right.
Because I'm going to be talking about the
quality data,
consistent data, and understanding the data. So yeah, that's I think that's going to be one of the key takeaways for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think jumping right into it, right. And so the mathematics of utilization are pretty simple, right. That's the relationship to billable and non-billable hours to each other. So I think ultimately, we can both attest that keeping good track of every hour, whether it's billable or non-billable, is super important. I think we know many people out in the industry are really great at keeping track of those billable hours. That sometimes the non-billable hours aren't tracked quite so well.
Yeah, they get lost in the shuffle.
So Karen, what do you see that maybe professional service firms can learn by really tracking utilization and understanding it?
Right. So, as you said, utilization is, the percentage of total hours worked that actually gets billed to the client. And total hours means just that. It's all of the time that your employees and, partners spend working, whether it's on client work or other things that, that have to get done, marketing, timesheets, billing. There's a litany of time that we spend working that doesn't all
end up on an invoice.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think one of the things that I want to stress here is the importance of tracking all time, in at least capturing the data, billable and non-billable. Having the full picture of where people are spending their time really helps business owners understand how an individual's efforts are contributing to firm overall profitability. As an example, take managing partner of a professional service firm. Their days are probably spent mostly doing administrative work, managing the firm. That doesn't necessarily get billed to a client, but yet that's a really valuable use of that particular individual's time. So, without really tracking the non-billable or the administrative type tasks, it's really difficult to measure somebody's, full contribution to firm profitability.
For sure, and in that example, right, it's not that you don't know that the person is doing the management of the firm, right? But it's about understanding based on that level of input what you're getting for the hours they're spending. Are they spending 20 hours, 100 hours, 1,000 hours doing that non-billable task and what that output looks like. And I think thinking about looking at the kind of whole big picture, what are your thoughts on the role that non-billable time plays in an organization? I know we hear it across all different sectors, and I think you kind of alluded to it already, but the billable hour is king, right? Why does non-billable time take such a backseat?
Yeah, so it's easy to understand why people place such importance, on the billable hour. It's very easily relatable to profit.
Right. That's what we're billing. That's
right. Client send you send an invoice, client sends you money, we made money.
Right.
And it's natural to think that the more top line revenue a firm has, the higher the invoices are, the more money that they make. But that's actually a misconception, and I think we're going to talk about that in another episode. But I really think that, focusing solely on billable hours, it almost completely discounts the value of non-billable tasks that many individuals, perform, whether employees or owners.
At least when we think about non-billable time, I think, right, there's kind of two buckets, right? There's the value add and the non-value add, right? And so, the value add being, maybe some of your marketing, maybe some of the time spent recruiting and training and coaching and staff development. Maybe your thoughts on the difference up between the two, those value add and those non-value adds.
Yeah, you hit on a really good point. There's clearly a difference between a billable hour and a non-billable hour.
Yep.
But even within the context of non-billable hours, there's good non-billable time, or what we've been referring to as value add non-billable time, and we use that phrase in our own firm. And then non-value add non-billable time or bad billable time. Taking that a step further, really understanding the data, right? So there's time number one.
Right.
And understanding how your people are spending their time really allows, decisions to be made and analysis to be done on whether or not people are spending too much non-billable time, whether it's value add or non-value add. And understanding and having that data really allows leadership, an opportunity to identify opportunities for automation, right?
Yep.
We're living in an age of, technological developments. And if automation isn't your thing, even outsourcing, accounting firms and lots of other types of professional service firms are looking at alternative staffing models.
Well, they have to, right?
Right.
I mean, it's the demand for quality staff seems to outweigh the supply.
100%.
A lot of these folks who are spending time on these non-billable initiatives, right? I think your example is maybe the obvious one that we started with, that shareholder managing partner level. Mm-hmm. It's clear that they're adding a lot of value that may not be dollars and cents directly, but they're adding a lot of value with their work.
Right. Running the firm.
For sure. And I think we've seen it, and I think we've seen it in a number of other professional service firms, right? That very often we see folks get assigned to projects, assigned to work. They have the right skill set for that work, and I think that's easy to equate to say, oh, yep, hey, they're experts in, like yourself, right? You're an expert in professional service firms, so Karen's leading the charge of that work. Easy to see like where that billable work comes from. It's maybe not always look to say, hey, because Karen's an expert in that field, she's also great, at delivering CLE, at networking and marketing opportunities, and it's and to me, right, it's about understanding the value that the person brings, whether that equates to a billable dollar today or not.
Yeah, and to kind of jump to week 4, because you're talking about, highest and best use. You're right, the higher up in an organization you go, the more knowledge you have, the more things that you're responsible for, the more opportunities there are for leverage, and really identifying, what that person's skill set is and where their time is best spent is really the key to this, whole utilization thing. Because if somebody is a great rainmaker, right, who's going to go out and bring in, phenomenal opportunities, for the firm, that's where you want them to be spending their time. If you tell them that they also, now have to work 2,000 billable hours and do that, right? You can't do that. That's unrealistic. But getting back to, value-added non-billable tasks, there's some, like we said, higher value than others. And I see those as training and development of your next gen, mentoring and coaching. Me personally here, I coach, I think 5, of our managers. And then that's, I help them figure out where their highest and best use is, so I'm training them to, move up. Business development, marketing, that's what we just talked about. Education, teaching, you mentioned CLE.
Let's mention it again, quality data, right? Quality data allows you to understand what the inputs are for the output, right? So thinking about somebody who is that rainmaker, who is that marketer, hey, if they're spending 500 hours a year, but they're able to bring in X amount of revenue, that might be worth more to the firm than them doing those 500 hours in billable time, right? Because you're leveraging the younger staff to execute the work that maybe the more experienced folks are bringing in. In line with that, if somebody's spending 500-700 hours on marketing and there's not much fruit coming from that tree, right? At the end of the year, because of that quality data, you can sit down and really understand what the output is, and equate it clearly to the input, other than, oh, hey, I've done a lot of marketing, it hasn't really led to much. Well, okay. Well, how much did you really do? And what did it really not lead to? Where are you spending your time? What groups are you doing? Does it make sense to keep doing what you're doing with different groups? Are you finally getting a leadership position? And so, without having the quantifiable inputs, it's a struggle.
Right, it is. And I'm going to go back to, one of the examples that you just gave, which was a significant amount of time and not really having, a whole lot of good results from that. Yeah. And again, going back to the data and having the good data and tracking those efforts what it allows leadership to do is really help people or help refocus people into areas where they are providing most value to the firm. One of the things that we really should be focusing on, particularly in professional service firms, is that you can't have a one-size-fits-all, set of requirements. You can't, or shouldn't, I can't say can't, because I've actually seen, examples in my, throughout my career, where there's a set billable hour target.
This is it for the entire department, the entire group, the entire level, the entire firm.
Irrespective of level. There's a set business development, goal. And that doesn't, again, in my mind, and we certainly don't practice that here. We have a very much a one size fits one.
Yeah.
Chris, your skill set is very different, than mine. So our non-billable tasks are not the same,
different.
and our billable hour targets are not the same either. So that's really, I think, the key takeaway is that it's okay, to get off of that one lane highway where everything has to be, the same, and really look at what's best, not only for your people, but for the firm. And you hit the nail on the head earlier when we were talking about outsourcing and alternative staffing models. Good people are really hard to come by now. So if you have one set requirement for everybody, that doesn't necessarily drive motivation, I think.
Right. As often as we're saying data, we're talking about highest and best use, right? And leverage. That if I'm a great rainmaker, or I'm great with staff development, why have me spend the time doing maybe some of that billable work when there's others who are more technical experts and can excel greater at that, right? So, what are maybe your thoughts? What are the takeaways as we get ready for next week?
So again, I think the last thing that I said is really kind of looking at your firm. And looking at the people and really like doing a deeper dive into what each individual can contribute, what's their skill set. And again, instead of just, look, it's great, everybody should have a billable hour target. I'm not suggesting that.
There certainly is a point where revenue generation is important.
Yes, so, billable hour targets are fine, but I think the goal really should be to at least open up a discussion internally about setting budgets. We didn't even go into budgets, right? Staff budgets or anything. Setting budgets for, these value-added non-billable times and starting to measure that.
Right. Again, understanding the inputs, right? Tracking the data. Correlating the output from the input. If you're the coach, if you're the trainer, understanding, hey, that takes time, that has a great value, right?
Yep. What worked yesterday isn't going to work tomorrow, and it may not work today. So challenge the status quo, and you have to open your mind to possibilities.
What worked yesterday might not work today. Certainly won't work tomorrow.
Exactly.
So I think that's kind of bring us to the end of this week's episode. Karen, thanks for joining. Make sure everybody comes back next week where we're going to start our conversation about realization. That's going to bring us to the end of this episode of the Balance Sheet Breakdown, the Wolf Investment Podcast. I'm Chris Frederick, helping you make sense of the numbers.